Yo, what's up, guys? We're back for another breakdown and predictions video. This week we got UFC Mexico City. We got UFC coming back to Mexico for the first time in a while. The last time they went there, they had that really unfortunate ending with Yair, Jeremy Stevens, the fans throwing all the stuff at the fighters. So hopefully we have a better result in the main event this time and an overall better flowing card. But definitely excited for this one, man. And we've been killing it so far this year. We've had 7 straight events of profit on betmma.tips on patreon.com/MMAPredictionGuru. So you would be silly, man, right now not to go over there, check it out, support the channel, make yourself some money, and watch fights, do what you love, and cash. So patreon.com/MMAPredictionGuru, we're on a roll right now. There's a ton of events this week. There's actually fights going on tomorrow with Uriah Faber's A1 Combat Show, so I'm going to be looking into that. And then there's a lot of other cards this week. They got Cage Warriors, KSW, Ryzen, LFA, PFL is back this week. ACA is going down this week. Fury has a show this week. So there's just a ton of action, ton of lines, man. So there's going to be quite a few bets that I am going to be placing. And there's bets that I've already placed for this UFC card. So definitely there's going to be a lot of content over on the Patreon this week that you would definitely be interested in. And besides that, man, you know the drill. Hit the like button, put a comment down below. I feel like I've been given really good information recently. I want as many people to see it as possible. So share this with a friend, put a comment down below, hit the like if you're listening. Let's try to get as much interaction, as much support on this video, on this channel as possible. Keep trying to continue to grow and get bigger, because I would really appreciate that from everyone that's listening that does like the content. So outside of that, man, let's get in this first fight of the night right here with Erik Silva taking on Muhammad Naimov. And so for the first fight of the night here, we got Erik Silva. He's going to be taking on Muhammad Naimov. And Muhammad Naimov, to me, taking a step back in competition here, but I kind of see it as a positive. After 2 huge victories to start his UFC career, he fought Jamie Malarkey, established guy at 155 pounds, dropped down to 145, got the victory there. And it seems the UFC wants to try to build Naimov up now based off his last win, because after beating Nathaniel Wood and Jamie Malarkey, you could easily get a top 15 opponent in there against him, but they're giving him a 36-year-old fighter who was finished in his first UFC fight. So seems like they're trying to showcase Naimov here, trying to add to his name recognition. And his opponent, Erik Silva, Venezuelan fighter, he, like many of the other fighters we're going to speak about, has been training at Brazilian Warrior Central for this fight in Puebla, Mexico, so has done a good job with the elevation. One thing for Naimov as well is he trains at Elevation Fight Team, so he's also training at Elevation, so both these guys should be ready for that. And Brazilian Warrior Center, it's Diego Lopez's gym, which, if you haven't been paying attention recently, is one of the up-and-coming gyms in MMA. And Diego Lopez, I mean, the guy's an active top 15 fighter, and he's still in contention for Coach of the Year. So that just shows how productive that gym has been. And Erik Silva is going to kick off the card for the gym. And he has a stiff test in front of him, though, along with a lot of red flags. I mean, he hasn't fought since December of 2022, 36 years old at 145 pounds. Both those things give me cause to concern. He also got finished by TJ Brown in his UFC debut. So the pressure's on here for Erik Silva. He has to win to stay on the roster, most likely. And how these two match up, Muhammad Naimov, powerhouse type of fighter, counter striker. He likes to use leg kicks. And in this fight, I would pressure a little more than normally. He has nice hooks. He'll throw some decent kicks too, spinning kicks. And if he's aggressive, gets in his opponent's face here, he could land and hurt him. I think he has the power advantage. But if he stays at distance and waits to counter, it could be a close fight if Naimov can't connect. He has to be a little bit more aggressive here against someone with Silva's style. And I think if he pushes the pace, he could get Silva tired. But Naimov, he has had some issues with wrestlers, and in this fight, he is going to get his takedown defense tested. I would say it's improving. It looked a lot better in his last fight, but had a big size advantage over Nathaniel Wood, and he also had a couple cheating incidents where he was grabbing the cage and things like that. So I think that did help him pretty significantly to avoid a lot of the grappling exchanges. And even at the end of the fight, like, he was glove grabbing to avoid getting ground and pounded, and that really saved him a lot. I mean, he could have even been finished potentially. So a lot of shenanigans in that fight with Wood, fouls. He was way bigger. So I think that it made him look a little bit better than he is. But I think in this fight, he's probably going to be able to win the scrambles and end up on top, even if he does get taken down. And cardio, like I said, for Naimov, I see as an advantage here. And his opponent, Erik Silva, looking to reclaim a little bit of magic that he's had fighting in Mexico. Obviously, the first fight in the UFC didn't go well, but he fought for Lux Fight League, which is the biggest promotion in Mexico recently, and went 4-0 there, became the champ, and that was where he was before he got signed to the UFC. Dominated all his fights. He went 4-0 with 4 rear naked chokes. Style-wise, he's a dynamic striker, hands down. He likes to throw a lot of flashy offense. Isn't really a combination fighter. He relies more on landing one powerful shot, hurting his opponent as opposed to the volume. He has hard leg kicks. He'll throw front kicks. He can mix in spinning kicks, jump knees. Okay hands, but mainly just tries to work the check hooks or the rear crosses. His last fight, he got rocked almost immediately as the fight started. TJ Brown came across the cage, got right in his face, which I think surprised Silva. Silva was able to land some big counters throughout the fight, but his opponent, TJ Brown, just absorbed them, and when he got inside, he landed clean, and Silva's chin wasn't good enough. I mean, he kept getting hurt, so that makes me a little bit nervous about this fight with a powerful guy in Naimov. And Silva's a serviceable grappler. He's athletic. He's difficult to take down in the open when fighters shoot on his legs. Good balance. In the clinch against the cage, I feel like his takedown defense isn't as good. That's where Naimov could get him down. I've seen Silva go for takedowns, and he will shoot singles. He'll shoot doubles, but I feel like he's not necessarily the greatest wrestler. I could see it maybe getting him down, Naimov down early, but I don't know if he's going to be able to control him. And I think that Naimov will probably be able to get back up to his feet if he does get taken down. But Silva has some jiu-jitsu skills, like he can hit sweeps, he has good back takes, good rear naked chokes. That's most of his finishes. Ground and pound finish of the Out Contender Series was pretty nasty, so he's dangerous, and most of his finishes do come on the ground. Silva did get a takedown on TJ Brown in the second round, but he got reversed. And when he was on his back in that fight against Brown, he just didn't have as many answers. He couldn't get back up to his feet. He got controlled for the majority of the fight, the first 2 rounds. And then in the third round, he came out a little desperate, was easily taken down, and then got submitted with an arm triangle. So not a good look in that fight. But 6 of his 9 wins are first-round finishes for Silva. His last 4 wins have been first-round finishes. And the last fight that he had that went past the second round that he actually won was in 2018. So I feel like his cardio is definitely a question mark. He gassed out a little bit in his fight with TJ Brown. He's been finishing the third round twice, and 36 years old, that Mexico City elevation, none of that's going to be helping him. Even though he does have the training camp here in Mexico City, I feel like he could gas out. Naimov should win this fight. I mean, he has the power edge, should have the wrestling edge. He just can't run into a power shot or knee or let Silva get to his back. If he lets Silva get his back, he could drop around. He could even get submitted with the rear naked. And Silva does have some dynamic striking, but Naimov is better overall everywhere. I feel like Silva's dangerous. Kind of a pass fight to me personally with the line. I think the line is kind of crazy at this point. But with all the factors kind of leaning towards a Naimov victory, I think he is more than likely to get the victory and get the job done here. So give me Naimov, and I'll say that he gets the win via second round KO TKO. I do think that second, third round Naimov props aren't terrible because I could see him getting the finish down the stretch here. And the second fight of the night, we got 2 flyweights coming off losses here, looking to get back in the win column. We got Victor Altamirano, who is the former LFA champion. He has had more fights in the UFC than Felipe dos Santos, and he has victories in the UFC, which Felipe Santos does not have, so he has the advantage in that essence, but he is the underdog here because Felipe dos Santos made a big impact in his UFC debut. He impressed a lot of people with his performance against Manuel Cape. Even though he lost that fight, Manuel Cape is ranked really high in the division, and Felipe dos Santos was able to push him and have a lot of success in certain portions of the fight. So went out there, had a good performance, made a name for himself, and that's why he's a pretty significant favorite here over Altamirano, who's 2-2 overall in the UFC, but has fought really good competition in his own right. Like his 2 losses to Carlos Hernandez, which was a split decision, and we see what Hernandez has gone on to do since. He has gotten that really nice victory over Denise Bondar, and even though he doesn't have the greatest record in the UFC, I do rate him and then he fought Tim Elliott, who I think is like a top 10 fighter currently. So taking that loss, there's no shame, and it's a much different stylistic matchup than the one with Felipe dos Santos. And one thing that is often a reoccurring thing in terms of MMA betting is when a debutant in the UFC comes in, they have a really impressive performance on short notice against an established fighter, and then the next fight they come out, they're a big favorite, and then they take a loss. So to me, this is a really tricky spot. Like, if you see people having a lot of confidence in Dos Santos, I wouldn't go with them on that. I feel like Altamirano's being disrespected on the line. I think the line is crazy. I see this as more of a pick'em type of fight. You look at Felipe dos Santos' resume, I don't think he's done anything at all to warrant being this significant of a favorite over Altamirano. And then you just look at it matchup-wise, I feel like it's a pretty close matchup. Victor Altamirano isn't the athlete that Felipe dos Santos is in terms of he doesn't have the power. He's not as explosive and fast. He's not as dynamic to watch. When you're just looking at the two guys, I could see why you could say, okay, this guy's a significant favorite over the other. But ultimately, I feel like on the feet they can be competitive because Altamirano's going to be shooting a lot of takedowns, and he's a little bit more crafty. He throws a little bit different strikes. He could switch stance. He's not going to be standing in front of Dos Santos and brawling with him. He's going to be moving and being evasive, level changing, like I said, and trying to break the rhythm of Dos Santos, whereas Dos Santos, kind of the shoot box type of guy. Comes forward, hands high, throwing 1-2s, wants to get in the pocket and brawl with you, and takes a lot of damage, can get taken down, has pretty good scrambling ability, can get back up. He doesn't have that submission game really of a lot of the other shoot box guys, but pretty good get up ability. And then his cardio and his durability are on point, so he can really push that war brawl style type of fight. But Victor Altamirano is a Mexican, man. This guy's going to be coming in with that same grit, same heart. And I think he has more paths to victory. I think if he can mix in some takedowns, it would at least give Felipe dos Santos something to think about and score points, even if Altamirano can't get him down. And then on the feet, if the takedowns are there and Altamirano's not just getting walked down and disrespected because of his lack of power, then I think he could be competitive because I think Dos Santos is going to be a little bit weary of closing distance to end up in another wrestling exchange. And I think Altamirano can kind of pick at him, move, avoid the big counter shots and the big punches of Dos Santos as he comes forward, and just kind of slightly edge it there. So ultimately, with the line being how it is, I have to go with Victor Altamirano. I think he has the experience edge. I think that this fight being in Mexico is an advantage for him. Both these guys, Altamirano trains in Texas, and Dos Santos obviously is over there in Brazil, so they're going to have to figure out how they are going to adjust to the elements and everything like that, and if they're going to be affected by that. But ultimately, I think if someone does get tired or is more affected, I think it's going to be Felipe dos Santos. But one thing I like about this card is it's 155 and under. It's like a WEC card, so there's no heavyweights. They're going to get tired in 2 minutes in the elevation and put on a super shit fight. So this is going to be entertaining more than likely, but I think it's 50-50 fight, like -110, -110. So ultimately, with me thinking that, there's no way that I could pick Felipe dos Santos. So I'm going with Altamirano, and I'm going to say he wins a close decision. And up next here, we got another flyweight fight. We got Luis Ronaldo Rodriguez taking on Denise Bondar. And this fight, I'm not going to have a long breakdown on it because I'm not confident on my prediction here. I feel like Luis Rodriguez, has some potential because the guy's obviously young and has some dynamic skills. But I think he's very green. Like, he's mainly just throwing big looping strikes and then wild attacks. And if he connects, he definitely has power. He's fast too, and he's creative. But I just feel like he still hasn't put it all together really. And then Denise Bondar, I feel like he's underrated. I think that his striking isn't bad. Like, he has good pressure, good speed. He has decent boxing. I think he actually has the better striking overall probably. It's just he potentially could get clipped or be a slight speed disadvantage. But I think that he could take down Rodriguez too. I don't necessarily think Rodriguez has the takedown defense or grappling to really deal with Bondar. I think that his wrestling is okay, but Bondar is a level above there. The only thing I just have an issue with this Bondar's durability at this point, because I'm really nervous about his last fight, man. I mean, the guy got knocked out with the slam, and then he got 7 extra elbows when he was out cold. That was like one of the most brutal knockouts of the year last year to me. And I just don't know how he's going to bounce back from that. He also hasn't won in quite a while. He is going to be the older guy. So to me, it's kind of a past fight, but I feel like Rodriguez just isn't quite UFC level yet. I think Bondar is going to be able to go out there and kind of outclass him and get the job done here, whether it's a decision or whether it's a finish. I'm not too sure, but I'm going to predict Denise Bondar gets the job. And continuing on through the prelims, we got Claudio Puelles. He's coming back after a year-plus layoff, and he's going to be taking on Faris Yam, who has been looking really good lately. Got a big-time win in his last fight in pretty dominant fashion. And the winner of this fight, I think, is going to get that step up back into a top 15, top 25 matchup. We saw Claudio Puelles in his last fight get that push. He fought Dan Hooker on a pay-per-view card, and really bad showing from him, so he kind of fell down the pile. But if he can get the win over Faris Yam, a blue-chip prospect, then he's going to be right back kind of in the same position he was. And for Faris Yam, got that big win over Danny Roberts. Not Danny Roberts. Who was the guy he beat? UK guy. Can't remember the guy's name right now, but he beat a good UK fighter, and now he is getting this fight. So if he wins this fight, I think he's going to be looking at probably a top 15 guy across from him next. But you look at how these guys match up. I mean, Puelles, maybe he'll come back with something different. I mean, the guy is only 27 years old, which is pretty surprising considering that he's been around the UFC for a while now. Like, he was in UFC Latin America in, like, 2015, the Ultimate Fighter show. But only 27 and hasn't fought, like I said, in a little bit over a year, almost a year and a half. He's been training at a Muay Thai gym. So maybe he's going to come in here with some new striking skills. But obviously, what we know of Claudio Puelles currently is he's pretty much a pure grappler. And then Faris Yam is an all-rounder, someone that came in as a kickboxer, but has gotten a lot better skill-wise everywhere. And both these guys have spent short stints at Kill Cliff FC. So I wonder if they actually had trained together or had any time together on the mats. If they have, I think that's an advantage for Ziam because Puelles is a specialist. Like, he's going to go in there, he's going to be looking for the leg attacks. So Ziam has had some reps already with the way that Puelles uses his leg attacks and how he goes and sets up his submissions. That could be really vital in him potentially defending some of these subs. But neither guy trained at Kill Cliff for this camp. And even though Puelles has been putting in work on his striking, I think that Ziam's going to have a huge advantage there. Ziam's a good distance striker, good ability to pepper you from the outside, beat you up, and I feel like he's just going to be way faster, way more technical than Puelles. He's going to be longer, and Puelles doesn't really have wrestling. Like, Ziam, I feel like his grappling is a little bit suspect. Like, he got submitted quick against McKinney. He's been submitted previous to that as well. So Puelles can get on top of him. He is going to have a pretty significant advantage. But most of the time when Puelles gets takedowns, it's usually when guys death gas, which I don't think Ziam is going to do. Or he pulls guard and then gets on top through a leg attack scramble or through some weird reversal. But when Puelles shoots, he usually likes to go upper body or shoot on the legs, and his takedowns on the legs aren't good, so he pulls guard and tries to get you to come down to the ground with him. And Ziam's going to defend all those upper body takedowns. I mean, with his length, this technical takedown defense, I think that he's going to be able to stuff all the upper body takedowns. He has a little bit more issues getting taken down with shots on the legs, but I just don't think Puelles has that in his arsenal. And the only way that I think Ziam loses this fight is if he just shows really poor fight IQ, plays the game that Puelles wants, follows him to the ground, and gets caught in a submission, a leg attack, something like that. Because I think on the feet he's going to have advantage. I think in the wrestling he's going to have advantage. I think in the clinch game he's going to have advantage. I think he's going to be the more athletic guy, the faster guy, the longer guy. So he has all the advantages here. He's going to most likely be able to get the job done and get the victory. we're going to have to see how he adjusts. You know, he hasn't had the best record outside of Europe, but recently he's gotten a couple wins in the United States, so that's definitely going to give him some confidence. And he's never really been someone that showed bad cardio, so I'm leaning towards Ziam, and I think he's going to make this one look pretty easily. I think Puelles is actually the one that could get tired or kind of quit and look for the way out. It seems like he checks out when he can't really get his finish. We saw that with the Dan Hooker fight. Went all out for the leg attacks. When it didn't go well for him, he kind of looked for a way out and got TKO'd. So I could see Ziam finishing him in the second or third round. And I'm going to go with Faris Yam to get the win. And up next here, we got a rematch between Edgar, Chairez, and Daniel Lacerda. Not going to spend too much time on this one. I feel like it's a really low-level fight. Chairez, the first time, was struggling a little bit early. I mean, Lacerda was the underdog like he is in this fight, but it seemed like he was getting a little bit better at the striking. It seemed like he was the better striker, faster guy. But Chairez just kept walking him down, and Lacerda ended up making that mistake that he usually does. He put himself in a bad position. Chairez locked up the neck, and I don't think he was going to submit him there. I mean, Lacerda it looked like he had an arm in, and I don't think he was in too much danger, but he relaxed in kind of a weird way, and the ref stopped the fight, and no contest, so that's why they're running it back here. But ultimately, I just feel like neither guy's really UFC level. I'm not too fond of either guy. Like, I don't like how Chairez pulls guard on all those guillotines and is really a submission hunter. And his striking isn't that good. Like, it's kind of just pressure, average boxing. He's not that fast for flyweight. Lacerda is definitely the more dynamic guy. But with Lacerda, we know what it is with him at this point. He has about 5 minutes of gas, and in Mexico City, it's probably like 2.5 minutes of gas. And if he can't get the finish, he usually gets finished himself or looks for the way out. And sloppy guy, not really skilled. So ultimately, I just feel like Chairez is going to be able to get that finish again just off great cardio, tenacity, heart. But yeah, he's a big favorite, and I think he deserves to be a big favorite. But I just don't have a lot of, I don't know. I don't really care about the fight personally. I feel like Chairez is not someone you could really trust at like minus 450, but have no interest in playing Lacerda either. So I think Chairez is going to get the win and win inside the distance. And continuing on through the prelims here, we got Jesus Aguilar. He's taking on Mateus Mendonca. And another flyweight bout. I mean, this is just a showcase of flyweight after flyweight. But this is a really interesting fight because I feel like a lot of people are going on the Mendonca side. And I get it, but I'm leaning towards Jesus Aguilar personally. And it's more because of the cardio and just because I think he's more durable. Those are the two reasons why I'm going with him. Because Mendonca, to me, he's someone that goes out and really is finished first. Like we saw in his last fight with Nate Menez, he went all out for that leg attack, and that's why he got knocked out. I feel like he doesn't have necessarily the greatest fight IQ overall. So I think that Aguilar's a really tough guy. Maybe Mendonca could take him down early and submit him. I think that's his path to victory. But if he can't do that early, I think that Aguilar's going to be able to take the shots. He's going to keep coming forward. And even though he's at that big height and reach disadvantage, Mendonca's not someone that really controls distance that well. He's going to be crashing in. And I think Aguilar could catch him with some pretty big counters potentially and land significant strikes on Mendonca. And I also feel like he can hurt him. And Aguilar can wrestle himself. If Mendonca starts to get tired, then Aguilar can mix in some takedowns. The thing about Aguilar's wrestling is it's sloppy, he makes mistakes, and pulls fighters on top of him and things like that. And if Mendonca comes in here with his head on right, ready to have to go 15 minutes and fight smart to a decision, he could win the grappling exchanges, control on top, and get the victory that way. But I just don't like his whole fight IQ, how he fights. I think that he's someone that goes all out for finishes. He doesn't have great ability to be composed in there and fight to a game plan. So I think that that's going to play into Jesus Aguilar's style. I think Aguilar wants someone to be wild and come at him, and so he could counter and land his big shots, get in the pocket, not have to chase someone and be on the outside. And I think that as far as the wrestling, it's very competitive, and Mendonca maybe has a grappling edge, but I think he's going to make mistakes in the grappling. Aguilar's going to be tough, be able to maybe get through a couple submissions, and then we're going to see Mendonca get tired. I think Aguilar's going to be able to keep the gas tank a lot better for longer in the fight, and ultimately I think Aguilar's going to be able to break Mendonca and probably finish him in the second or third round. I feel like Mendonca is a little bit chinny, and I think Aguilar could take advantage of that and get the victory. So ultimately, I think Aguilar is going to get the upset here. I know a lot of people are on Mendonca, but I'm going to go with Jesus Aguilar in this fight. And closing out the prelims here, we got Crisian Quiñones. He's taking on Raoni Barcelos, and this for me is a difficult fight to predict because I feel like Barcelos is definitely on the way out. I don't think that he's even close to the level that he was when he came into the UFC, and he was already a little bit older. But I'm not too impressed with Crisian Quiñones. I think that he has a lot of holes, and he's a good kind of point fighter on the outside, and then he can make you frustrated, run you into some big shots. He has fast hands, he has good speed, good footwork, good movement. But I feel like if you can get in his face, and if Barcelos avoids getting caught as he comes in and gets knocked out, I think that Barcelos can cut the cage off and create exchanges. And if he does that, I think he can connect clean on Quiñones. We see Quiñones' defense is not good. He just kind of pulls back. And if Barcelos can back him up towards the cage, get him to pull back, he can land clean with his hand combinations. It's just Barcelos is going to have to throw volume, and he can't let Quiñones just point fight him on the outside. He's had a couple fights where he's lost off activity, and he can't let that happen again here. I think he can also take down Quiñones potentially as well and test that grappling in Quiñones. We don't know much about it. I mean, his last fight he got hurt and then submitted, but didn't look very good on the ground. It's hard to say because he did get hurt before, but Barcelos is a beast on the ground. The guy is extremely high level. If he can mix in takedowns, I think he could really kind of pull away in this fight and maybe find the finish. I think he can get the submission potentially. And his chin is questionable. His age is questionable. You don't know how his cardio is going to hold up. You don't know if he's going to have the volume necessary to win. And that's why as a almost 2-1 favorite, I think he's a little bit difficult to trust. But ultimately, I think he's fought a lot better opponents. And I think he has the skills to get the victory over Quiñones. So at the end of the day, I'm going to pick Raoni Barcelos to get the win, and I'm going to say Raoni Barcelos wins via second round submission. And kicking off the main card, I think we got another fight that is extremely difficult to predict. To me, it's another clear pass fight, and there's a lot of people that are very confident on Manuel Torres, and I'm very surprised by that. I don't understand that at all. I mean, Torres to me hasn't proven anything to go out there and make him like almost 2-1 favorite over Chris Duncan. I mean, Torres does have good straight punches, nasty elbows on the inside, and that touch of death. So that does give him an ability to land on Duncan, who can eat shots as he comes in. But I feel like Torres got really tired in that Camacho fight in a very short period of time, like 4 minutes. He was looking like he was pretty gassed. And I don't know how good his wrestling is. I don't know how good his grappling is. He's got submitted twice with leg attacks. The majority of his wins and the majority of his fights have came against low-level Mexican regional scene fighters. So he's going to have to prove more to me in this fight. Like, he has won the majority of his fights in the first round. So if he can go out there and take Duncan out in the first round, I think that's going to be his clear path to victory. But Chris Duncan's a tough guy. I mean, he's shown in multiple fights now that he's survived getting hurt early to come back to win. And he's the more skilled fighter. I feel like his striking is underrated. He has a good jab. He has good pressure, solid basics. I think he could stay defensively sound enough to not get knocked out early. And if he can do that, then he could probably get the win. Just pressure, mix in some clinch control against the cage, mix in some takedowns. He does have to avoid that guillotine from Torres, but I don't think he's going to get caught in a guillotine or something against a low-level grappler when he's been training at an American top team with these higher-level guys. Cardio for Duncan has always been an asset, so I think that could even be a bigger asset against a guy that's not usually used to going longer fights in elevation. So Chris Duncan, to me, just has more paths to victory. I think he can mix it up. I think that on the feet, he's going to be more competitive than people think, especially if the fight starts going a little bit longer. And I think Duncan has had the better training. I just think he's a little bit more proven. If he gets knocked out early, I wouldn't be surprised, really. I think that there's definitely a path to victory for Torres to just go out there and blitz Chris Duncan out of there in the first round. But if he can't do that, then I think Chris Duncan has more than enough to come back and get the victory. So due to that, I'm going to go with the upset, and I'm going to say Chris Duncan gets the win and gets the finish in the second or third, or wins via pretty easy, comprehensive decision. And up next here, we got the first and only female fight on the card with Yazmin Jauregui taking on Sam Hughes. And I think these girls are fairly similar. I don't know why they have Jauregui listed at 5'3". I mean, to me, I've seen her in pictures with other people. I've watched her fight. To me, she looks like 5'6", 5'7". She seems pretty big, so I don't believe that height is correct. We're going to see when they, stand next to each other, her and Sam Hughes, but I think they're going to be closer to the same height, if not Jauregui having a height advantage. I don't think that is going to be correct, but both these girls are big for the weight class. They like to pressure, use their boxing, and then I think Jauregui has a lot better boxing. She's a lot more confident in her hands, whereas Sam Hughes, she relies more on using the jab in her hands to close the gap, clinch girls against the fence, get on top. And when she can get on top, she's actually pretty good. But in this matchup, I feel like Jauregui is a big favorite for a reason. You look at how she fights out there, I think that she's going to have the much crisper, faster hand. She throws nice 1-2s, 3-2s. And I think that she's going to be able to connect on Hughes early and often. And when they exchange, she's going to have the power advantage and the technique and speed advantage. So I think she's going to be landing, getting off more, and landing clean, pretty significant shots on Hughes. And Hughes could potentially try to mix it up and clinch against the cage and things like that. But I think physically wise, Jauregui is one of the physically strongest girls in the division. I think she's going to be able to match what Sam Hughes has to offer there, and maybe even turn the tables and put Sam Hughes on her back, or turn her on the cage and control the clinch. So I feel like Jauregui is going to be able to match the physicality of Hughes and get the better of the grappling exchanges, and then be significantly better on the feet at distance. I think she's going to be the one doing the damage. The issue with Jauregui is she did get knocked out earlier in her last fight, and if you remember a fight before that with Estela Nunes, she got dropped early in the first round. So she has an issue with getting caught cold in the beginning of fights, but I don't think Sam Hughes has that knockout ability. I don't think she has the power. So for me, Yazmin Jauregui is the girl that's going to get the job done, and I think she's going to win via dominant decision. And continuing on through this main card, we got Raul Rosas Jr. He's going to be taking on Ricky Turcios. And when you're looking at Raul Rosas Jr., obviously 19 years old at this point, and still the youngest fighter in the UFC, still someone that's has name recognition because of that and is looking to get built up. And the UFC is giving him another kind of harmless type of guy here, where his last fight they gave him a free win with Terrence Mitchell. I mean, to me, that was one of the worst fighters in the UFC. Rosas went out there and took him out early in the first round, so Raul Rosas looked really good in that fight. But I think it was just tailor-made, easy matchup. I think almost anyone in the UFC's bantamweight division would be able to do that. And now they're giving him a fight against a guy that's not necessarily has finishing ability, but is a tricky grappler that can maybe get in some scrambles with Rosas, make the fight entertaining. And that's why the UFC's matching this fight up here. Ricky Turcios also had some hype at one point where he did win the Ultimate Fighter. And he has gotten a couple of victories in the UFC. He has a winning record, so it's not like he's a complete zero, but I think that you look at his fights, his stand-up, he doesn't really have good hands. He's not someone that could threaten a knockout, and he doesn't have wrestling, so it's going to be the fight that Raul Rosas wants. So you look at how these guys match up. It's an interesting fight, though, because Turcios is a black belt. You have to remember that. I think that Rosas is a purple belt, and he hasn't fought that many elite grapplers yet, or really higher level grapplers. So Turcios is going to be one of the first guys that is that. And you look at how these guys fight, though, they're completely different styles in terms of grappling, where Raul Rosas Jr. wants to get on top. He wants to beast you. He wants to use his ground and pound to get to the back and then flatten you out, submit you, ground and pound you out. He has good arm triangles. He'll attack front chokes. And he's looking for that quick finish with his submission game, looking to use his athleticism, his early burst, and get you out of there. Whereas Ricky Turcios, he's someone that he's fought a lot of wrestlers, and the way that he's defeated them is he gets taken down. His wrestling isn't good, but he stays active. He attacks the legs a lot. He creates a lot of scrambles, and then he can get in dominant positions and use his length and use kind of his awkwardness on the ground, his flexibility and things like that to maintain weird positions and kind of win on points in that manner. And then on the feet, he throws a lot of volume, even though he has very poor accuracy. He really only looks for the left hook or the jab, and then throws a lot of kicks that I feel he's not even necessarily trying to land. But if Rosas gets tired trying to get the finish early, Turcios definitely could come back and do well in this fight, create scrambles, get on top, maybe defend a couple of takedowns once Rosas really gets tired, and can get the victory that way. But I'm leaning a little bit more towards Rosas Jr. I just feel like he's had to have learned from that fight that he had where he went the distance and got tired. I think that he's going to pace himself a little bit better here, especially with knowing Turcios' style, his acumen on the ground. And Ricky Turcios, he's been able to beat a lot of good wrestlers. Like he beat Ludovic Sholinian, he beat Dan Argueta, he beat Brady Heistand. But you look at his career, he hasn't really faced someone that has good jiu-jitsu. He fought a lot of wrestlers. So I'm thinking maybe if he gets taken down here against Rosas Jr. and tries to create scrambles and give up bad positions to get on top, maybe Rosas Jr. will be able to do a little bit better job of controlling than we've seen wrestlers without great jiu-jitsu be able to do. And maybe Rosas can get a submission. I mean, Turcios will put himself in front choke danger, and I feel like he has faith in his submission and scrambling game that he will let himself get into bad positions to try to use that to get on top. And maybe against Rosas that could be his downfall, and it could lead to him getting finished. So I'm just leaning towards Rosas. I think that he's probably going to be able to get the win via decision or submission. But I think Turcios is a live underdog in this spot just because he has cardio. And if he can create scrambles, get Rosas tired early, then he has a path to win down the stretch. But I'm going to go throw Rosas Jr. to get the win. And this next fight, we got Daniel Golden Boy Zellhuber. He's taking on Francisco Prado. And two young guys that are going to be coming in here looking to see who's the better prospect of the two. You got Daniel Zellhuber, who lost his UFC debut to Trey Ogden at a pretty pitiful showing in that fight, but has bounced back with two nice wins. Got to finish his last fight over a veteran in Christos Giagos. And Francisco Prado came in the UFC against Jamie Malarkey, lost that fight, got kind of dominated over 3 rounds, but he was able to come back at the knockout win over a Zatar who had not fought in a long time, but there was a grudge match there, and Francisco Prado was able to catch him with a really slick knockout in the first round. So he's coming in here with some momentum. Daniel Zellhuber's coming in here with some momentum, and we're going to see who wins in this prospect battle. We got two different builds here as well. Francisco Prado, more kind of a, he's not short for the division at 5'10". He's probably average sized, but kind of strong, muscular, kind of short, stocky build, not really long arms or anything like that. Whereas Daniel Zellhuber has that long frame, 6'1", so he's only 2 inches taller than Prado, but he has an 8-inch reach advantage in the arms. Super long arms, super long legs, and just kind of a, very long and lanky type of guy. And you see Zellhuber early, and I think he's going to correct this. Early, it seems like he has to take shots to find his range and rhythm. And then once he gets hit early, he really starts to settle in, and he could pick you apart and use his length. But I think he needs to figure out how to avoid getting hit early to set up his range and, take that part out of his game. He is someone eventually could hurt him and knock him out. But in this matchup, I think he's significantly better on the feet technically than Francisco Prado. I really don't think Prado has the greatest striking. I mean, the guy is a knockout artist, and that's really what he brings. Like, he comes forward, he's a little plotty. I don't think he's the fastest guy, but he can explode in fast. Like when he actually goes with his feet work, he kind of plods in. But then when he actually explodes in, he has some ability to close the distance quick. And he'll throw these wild techniques like spinning elbows, big punches, and he's good at finding the chin. So early on, he's going to have a chance to run Zellhuber into something crazy and potentially get the knockout. I think Zellhuber definitely wants to avoid being in that dirty boxing range with Prado, because that's where Prado has the most dangerous attacks with his elbows. I think his elbows are really nice, but at distance, Prado doesn't really throw that often. He doesn't bring too much. He doesn't have good basics, and I think Zellhuber is going to be able to beat him up and be a lot higher volume at distance. And then Prado has bad wrestling defense as well. So I think Zellhuber, he's had a few years now where he's been training at Extreme Couture, and he can wrestle, he can grapple, he has good front chokes. I feel like he could mix in some clinch control, he could mix in some takedowns here on Prado and be successful with that. I think that could be a smart way to make Prado hesitant to be wild and actually throw and use his dynamic ability, which is his path to victory, to find the knockout. But I just don't see Prado having the technicality to win a stand-up fight with Zellhuber long term if it goes to a distance or it goes any significant amount of minutes. I think he's going to have to catch him early on before Zellhuber finds his range and his rhythm. And I think that Zellhuber has the advantage in the wrestling and grappling department as well. So I feel like Zellhuber has a lot of advantages here and is the clearly superior fighter. Prado has a chance to get a knockout with his dynamic ability, but I think Zellhuber is going to end up getting the win here and looking pretty good doing it. And next here we got the co-main event. We got Yair Rodriguez taking on Brian Ortega. This is a rematch from a fight that went down a couple years ago, and Rodriguez did get the win in that fight, but it was a little bit weird circumstances where Ortega got hurt on the ground, and you could argue it was from a submission, but it was more kind of a fluke accident to me, and Yair was able to get the win, so they're running it back. And this is an elite level matchup, man. I mean, you got the most dynamic, dangerous striker in the division against the most dynamic, dangerous grappler in the division. And someone's going to implement their will and someone's going to get the win here. And I feel like people are really shitting hard on Ortega here. I mean, I've heard some takes like we were saying Yair was 10-8ing him in the first round. He was dominant. That's not true. I mean, you go rewatch the fight. Like, Ortega, to me, was doing really well in that fight, personally. I mean, he was closing the distance. He was right in Yair's face. He was landing the left hook quite often, like on the feet there, landing pretty equally. And Ortega is not necessarily known for his ability to take guys down. Like, he really struggles with that. And usually it takes, 2-3 rounds of wearing a guy down to get a takedown. Ortega got 2 takedowns in the first round. I mean, he had him against the cage. Seemed like he had no trouble backing him up and putting him up against the fence. So I liked a lot of what I saw from Ortega in that first fight. I feel like he had a lot of success early, and I think that early, before I watched that fight, I would have thought Yair early on would have had a lot more success defending the takedowns and not letting himself get pushed and backed up against the cage like that, but he really didn't, and Ortega was able to do what he wanted. He was on top when he ended up getting finished, which I think the likelihood of that happening again would be extremely low. So for Rodriguez, he's coming back after that loss to Volkanovski, where he got the title fight, kind of got dominated in that one. There was some controversy because he did get finished right after he got headbutted pretty bad, so it could have attributed to it, but he was getting dominated throughout the whole fight with the takedowns. And that's been Yair's Achilles heel his whole career. I mean, even if you go back to that famous fight he had with Frankie Edgar where he got his eyes closed shut, he's getting taken down and beat up on the ground, and he just has never been able to correct that wrestling disadvantage that he has against almost everyone that he fights in his game. Even Max Holloway was able to go in there and get several takedowns on Yair and use that to win the fight. So I feel like Ortega's getting disrespected on the line here. I get that he hasn't won a fight since 2020. I understand that he's coming off a layoff, but we've seen Ortega do well with this coming back off a layoff previously. He took some significant time off before he came back, and he was a significant underdog in this fight. Like, in hindsight, people don't rate this win as highly as it was at the time, but when he came back and beat Korean Zombie was on that knockout streak. He was like a 3-1 favorite over Ortega, and Ortega put on a masterclass and dominated him. So Ortega has shown that he could take these layoffs, come back, and show up as an underdog and get the win. And Yair, I feel like his the path to victory for both guys is clear. I mean, Ortega's going to have to pressure, kind of jam the kicks, jam the dynamic attacks of Yair, try to get him down to the ground, and then ultimately wear him out and submit him. I think Ortega's going to have the cardio advantage, and especially if he can make it more of a wrestling, grappling type of fight. And Yair's going to have to try to catch him coming in and knock him out. I think with the one-strike attack, I don't necessarily think Yair could stay at range and outstrike him over 5 rounds. I don't see that necessarily being a huge likely path to victory. I think if Yair wins, it's going to be a knockout in the first 3 rounds, and we've all seen how extremely durable and tough Brian Ortega is, so I think that's going to be a difficult thing to do for Yair. And if Yair can't get him out of there early, then I think Ortega's style with the pressure and trying to get it to the ground is going to be more successful over 5 rounds. So this fight being 5 rounds, I think, is a huge thing that not a lot of people are talking about. Like, obviously, most co-main events aren't 5 rounds, but they're making this fight a 5-round fight. I think if it was a 3-round fight, Yair would have a lot better chance of victory. With 5 rounds, I think it gives Ortega the advantage. So I'm going to go with Brian Ortega here. I think he's going to catch the submission. I'll say he gets the submission in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round. The later rounds, I think Ortega is going to be able to find that neck or get into a scramble and catch a triangle or some sort of choke. So give me Brian Ortega here to come back, get the upset win, and get the victory over Yair Rodriguez here. And finally, we got the main event. We got Brandon the Assassin Baby Moreno taking on Brandon Raw Dog Royval. And high-level fight between 2 of the best flyweights in the UFC. And this is another rematch from a fight from 2020 where Brandon Moreno was able to get the win. But just like the co-main event, there was an injury on the ground that led to Brandon Royval getting finished. So there was a little bit of controversy in the fight. So they're going to get a definitive winner this time around. And Royval seemed really upset about how the first fight ended and seemed confident in how the fight was going, which I was a little surprised by because Moreno was definitely dominating the fight. But I've never been a big Brandon Royval guy. Like, if you look at his last fight when he fought for the belt, both these guys' last loss was to Pantoja, so they're both coming off title fight losses. But Royval got dominated, whereas Moreno made it a really, really entertaining fight. And Royval, to me, has always had flaws, like when you get him to face this level of opposition. The guy's extremely fun to watch, super rangy guy that brings the knees, brings dynamic attacks, spins, elbows. I just feel like he doesn't have the greatest boxing or the greatest defense. I think Moreno, with his jab, can win the fight just off the jab alone. He just has to stay technical, defensively sound, and use that jab on the feet. And I think he can beat up Royval just with the jab. And Moreno can get the takedowns here, man, just like he did in the first fight. That's the issue with Brandon Royval. The guy's so wild on their feet that gives up the takedowns, and he thinks he can be aggressive off his back and create scrambles, submit you. But when you're getting into this higher level upper echelon in the division, these guys aren't going to get tired in the scrambles. They're just going to, follow you, flow with you, and keep you on the ground. And they're not going to get submitted or get beat up on the mat and lose off you winning with strikes off your back or submissions off your back. Like 9 out of 10 times, you're not going to be able to be on the right side of that type of fight. I feel like Moreno could take him down and get into dominant positions, control him pretty easily. We saw him do that in the first fight. I think he could submit him with the rear naked choke even potentially. And on the feet, I think he's going to be able to control the chaos. I think he's going to be able to use the jab. I think he's going to be able to use his boxing to negate all the crazy wild attacks that Brandon Royval is going to be doing. I think Royval is going to be very emotional and fighting wild and crazy in this fight because he is trying to get the loss back and he's coming back off his first title loss. It seems like he's a little emotional from that loss, whereas I think Moreno, he's a former champ. He's fought so many title fights in a row recently that he's an unflappable vet at this point, and I don't think that he's going to be feeling that same pressure. And you can't forget, I mean, even if this fight is competitive and close, Moreno's probably going to win the decision, just like we saw in the fight with Askar Askarov, where it looked like, or actually that was kind of, I don't know why I said that, now I'm thinking about it, it's like complete opposite, where Askarov got the draw when I thought Moreno won. But you have to think, I don't know, maybe not. I mean, now that I said that, I kind of am psyching myself out. But you have to think that judges are probably going to be leaning towards Moreno if it's a close fight still, even though they didn't the last time they were in Mexico. But I don't necessarily see this as a close fight. I think Moreno's going to be able to dominate. I think Royval is going to be able to hang in there and be tough. So I wouldn't be surprised if this fight even went all 5 rounds. But I think Moreno's going to win this one. And I think he could win by submission, by TKO, or by decision. I feel like his line is accurate. I think he could even be like a minus 400 favorite. So I like Moreno in this spot. I think he's going to be able to get the victory and look pretty good doing it. I think he's definitely a threat for the title and probably the best fighter in that division outside of Pantoja. So Brandon Moreno is going to be my prediction to get the job done in the main event. So there you have it, guys. That's the full card breakdown and predictions for UFC Mexico City. UFC Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you learned something. Like I said at the beginning of the video, hit that like button, put a comment down below, share the video. I feel like we're on a roll right now, giving out great predictions, great advice. We've cashed 7 weeks in a row on Patreon, so want to get as many eyeballs on these videos as possible. So if you enjoy the content, definitely share it. I would really appreciate that. Interact with the video as well. And as far as my parlay of the week goes for this week, I'm going to give you a parlay with Daniel Zellhuber and Brandon Moreno. So that's going to be my parlay of the week. And my most confident pick is going to be Yazmin Jauregui as the prediction. So there you have it, guys. That is everything that I'm going to be giving you guys for this card. If you want to go get extra breakdowns for this week for all the events that I did shout out at the beginning of the video, like KSW, LFA, ACA, Uriah Faber's A1 Combat, PFL, Ryzen. There's even a couple others. So ton of events going on this week. So definitely a great week to go to patreon.com/prediction guru. Already got bets for this fight card as well. Several of them available. So get there as quick as possible to get the best odds. And we're going to keep it rolling with this win streak, man. We're going to be cashing out for the whole year. I'm feeling pretty confident, pretty good with my reads, breakdowns, predictions, bets. So in a good groove right now. Hopefully everyone else is feeling good, feeling confident, having a good year. So thanks for watching this video, guys. Like I said, would really appreciate support on this video and interaction. And I'll talk to you guys later.